you look at the unprecedented actions our central bank took. Our central bank was never created to shore up the economy. It was created for one main purpose alone: to tame inflation, to create predictable inflation. That's what the Federal Reserve has been doing since its inception. But starting in 2008, our government and our society agreed to take crazy, unprecedented action to nearly quadruple our money supply in the United States over a short period of time, and providing basically interest-free loans for over a decade.
Throughout 2022, the economy remained strong. Unemployment hovered near historic lows.
Showing unemployment at a half-century low.
Wages were on the rise.
We also saw some wage growth, about 5% annually,
causing the Fed to continue pumping the brakes to try to cool down inflation.
The Fed has been raising rates in hopes of slowing the economy. And with so many businesses still hiring, that means the economy isn't really slowing that quickly.
That riled Wall Street.
Facing the growing possibility of a recession, Wall Street spent another day in turmoil.
And you're probably feeling it in those 401ks. Stocks are...
For the stock market and bond market, it was the worst year since the great financial crisis in 2008.
The Nasdaq down for 4 straight quarters for the first time since the dot-com bust.
In 2022, we've had this very unusual situation whereby you've made double-digit losses on both risky assets, stocks, and risk-free assets, U.S. Treasuries. That's not supposed to happen. But there's been absolutely nowhere to hide. That is a big issue for retirement plans, pension systems. No matter how well you diversified your portfolio, there was no risk mitigation in it at all.
It was all losses.
It was all losses.
U.S. existing home sales plunged to a 12-year low in December.
You've seen a huge impact on the housing market.
The Federal Reserve's interest rate hiking cycle has pushed
housing prices have started actually coming down for the first time in a very long time. Mortgage applications have decreased. The crypto market, you've seen a number of companies wiped out.
Crypto winter is here.
That is not unrelated to what's happened with the Fed.
Sam, hold on to me, Sam. Let's go.
Sam Bankman-Fried faces investigations from U.S. regulators and potentially the Department of Justice.
He invested $3 million into Luna, and now it's worth 1,000.
You create these asset bubbles. That is, bubbles in stock markets and bond markets and real estate markets and art markets, whatever people invest their money in with borrowed money. And then those bubbles burst, and then that causes a downturn. So
Stephen Pearlstein has been reporting on the financial markets and the economy for almost 40 years.
That look like that. Bubbles tend to be everything bubbles these days, because if the source of it is cheap money, then you can be pretty much sure that it's not just real estate, or it's not just stocks, or it's not just tech and telecom, or it's not just Bitcoin. These things are connected by rubber bands with each other in a sort of way, and what propels one propels all of them.
There's a famous line by investor Warren Buffett.
You know, you don't find out who's been swimming naked until the tide goes out, and
almost everyone I spoke to repeated that line to describe what's been happening.
What happened on November 3rd, 2010 represents a step change in the Fed's role in our economy. When the Fed changes from a central bank that manages the currency to the primary engine of economic growth in America, whatever your philosophy is, small government, limited government, big government that hires people to go out and build roads to stimulate growth, whatever it is, it's supposed to be our democratic institutions that do that, not the central bank.
You're basically saying that because our democratic institutions are so paralyzed and there's so much political dysfunction, that we as a society, we as a country have become overly reliant on the Fed to run things?
Totally. Economic affairs.
Yeah.
I think one of the most important things to think about is that Our democratic institutions in America are becoming less and less capable and less effective. I think that point is almost undeniable. So what we're doing in this country is we're relying on our non-democratic institutions to take up the burden, like the central bank and economic affairs, which leads you to the surreal place where we are today, where this committee of 12 people is making these decisions that could very well plunge our economy into a deep, deep, deep recession and cause financial crisis.
The Age of Easy Money from Frontline on PBS is an incredible documentary. I highly recommend if anyone wants to understand what's going on in our banking and financial economy over the last 2 decades. I remember growing up in high school and learning about the Great Depression. And what preceded the Great Depression was the Roaring '20s. I remember learning about it more in detail in college. Even in grad school, thinking, wow, what a crazy, crazy economy. And how could the people not recognize what they were setting themselves up for that ultimately came out with the Great Depression? And then we have the Age of Easy Money. And I've lived through it and never once considered, wow, are we experiencing some kind of event like the Roaring '20s that could end with some great economic meltdown like the Great Depression? Never once thought about it, but you watch this documentary. The banks made a fortune doing it. Everyone learned to experience this new age of easy money and capitalize off of it and leverage off of it. But one thing I, as a parent, am learning is very hard to teach kids. Every action has consequences. When you provide basically free money to an entire global economy for over a decade, there's gonna be consequences. We're just starting to experience and feel those consequences today. The Age of Easy Money. I'm not telling people to freak out here. Just recognize the unprecedented time period that we're in and figure out ways to capitalize and leverage off of this huge movement in our economy that we're gonna see for the next decade or two. There are gonna be opportunities. I don't know if we're gonna experience another Great Depression. We're gonna experience something. We certainly haven't experienced the full effect of 12 years of easy money yet. But you look at all of the companies and large manufacturers and businesses that made their fortunes throughout the Depression. What did they do differently? They recognized a changing time, an inflection point in our economy, and they leveraged off of it. They utilized it for their own good. And this is what we are trying to do on Hidden Money, is help our people figure out, help our listeners, help ourselves figure out how to leverage off of these changing times, off of these crazy times, off of these exciting times. What can you do differently over the next decade to ensure your financial future and success?